Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining our Dion Leadership webinar series today. Our topic today is going to be the Executive Coaches Panel, Strategies for Leading in 2021. Joining us today is Steve Dion, founder and CEO of Dion Leadership, and our panel of executive coaches, Mehdi Ilkanipour, Lucy Botello, and Julie Reed.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate the introduction and welcome everyone. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to join another one of our webinars. If you're new to this webinar series, we commit to being done within an hour and provide some great thought leadership. Today, we chose this topic of executive leadership coaching. And the reason for that is that the last couple months, we've spent time discussing best practices and group development. And so we thought it's a good time to turn our attention to individual leadership coaching. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Dion, and I'm the CEO of Dion Leadership. And I'll be moderating our panel discussion today. And just to level set how we'll spend our time together through the direct experience and lens of three of our expert, esteemed leadership coaches, you will be learning some best practices in executive development with our experience around leadership coaching, particularly. And then what's on the minds of leaders in this current business climate? You know, these coaches have an opportunity to really spend a lot of intimate time with leaders understanding their business challenges. And we have a way to help unpack that today. Talk a little bit about how you use coaching for well-being during these challenging times. And specifically for those of you that are not sure about how to use executive coaching in your organization, this might help you figure out ways to use leadership coaching within your particular business. Our format today is going to be that I will briefly be laying out sort of the context of leadership coaching, just 4 or 5 minutes of that. And then I will ask our coaches to join us on video and we'll introduce each of the three coaches. And we have a few prepared questions that we are ready to dialogue about, but I encourage you to use the chat feature to ask any questions that you want. And throughout our discussion today, this will be an open forum dialogue for the majority of this. We'll stop and answer any questions that you have. So feel free to put those in chat and I'll be monitoring those. And we hope to really answer all those questions. And if not, we can follow up with them after. But before we introduce our coaches, I wanted to give you a little bit of context about who we are and how we bring coaching to bear. You know, coaching is a broad term. It can be everything from career coaching to life skills coaching to business coaching, and I wanted to share a little bit more about our model and approach so you can put more context to this work today. So for those of you that are new to Dion Leadership, this is who we are. You know, we are really motivated by imagining that employees can start every day excited and end every day accomplished. And we have a team of about 60 coaches and consultants that do this work. And we handpicked 3 today that we thought come from a couple of different diverse backgrounds to share with you about what leadership coaching looks like. And coaching is one of about 5 areas that we do. We're not just a coaching firm, but I would say about 40% of our work is individual leadership coaching, and about 50% is in the group development space. And in leadership development programs, sometimes we're also bringing in individual coaching with team development or group development workshops. And we also do a lot of team development work, which sometimes will turn into individual coaching. So coaching is kind of a mainstay for the work that we do and how we approach this work within our organization. And then to give you some context of when we talk about the coaches, we're not going to be talking about any particular names or titles, but our coaches come from organizations like these. So we do a lot of work in healthcare, a lot of work in large global manufacturing companies. And most of the people that we coach are at the director, VP, C level within companies like these. So I want to give you a bit of a sort of a context of that. And then last, let me frame coaching, and then we will get right into our panel discussion. So here's how we think about coaching. So, you know, coaching is not consulting, telling, teaching. We really use more of a traditional coaching, certified coaching model of using cognitive behavioral learning. So we try to think about the outcome that a coachee wants, and then the behavior that they need to exhibit to get that outcome, and then say, okay, based on this situation, what mindset shifts do you need to have so that you can behave in a way that's consistent with your outcomes? So through leadership coaching, not telling and teaching and hey, read this book and do it this way, but through inquiry about self-exploration and mindsets, we're hoping to help create healthier outcomes. What we typically find is that a talent management professional, maybe an HR business partner or a senior leader is the one that's calling us to say, I have a coaching need for somebody who works in my organization. Typically, again, at that VP or above level. Usually the person is either assuming a new role, they're wanting to develop a specific strength that the organization says they're great, but this person needs development in this particular area. The leader themselves wants to enhance performance in their current role. Or sometimes the organization is using coaching, especially this last year, for retention purposes, because the leader says, I'm interested in developing my skill sets, and for me to stay here, I expect coaching as a benefit. So that's usually where we're coming into kind of the coaching relationship. And then what they typically look like for us, and it can vary slightly, but these are probably 90% of our coaching programs fall within these coaching lanes. So as our coaches talk today about this, many times they'll be working in our executive coaching program, which is 6 to 12 months worth of coaching with an individual. Sometimes it's integration coaching, so integrating somebody new into the organization or newly promoted in the organization. And again, we're working with them for a good long period of time, 6 to 9 months. Targeted coaching is where there's one specific skill or competency, as I mentioned on the last slide, that we're trying to develop. We'll work with that coachee for about 4 months. Talent fit coaching is when we're not sure if this person's really a fit for this role of the organization, and we're helping the organization and that coachee kind of navigate where they should be for maximum effectiveness. And then last is emerging leader coaching, is a smaller coaching program where we'll do some self-assessment, action planning, and some small coaching. But by and large, most of our coaching programs that we'll be talking about today would be coachees that have either done executive coaching, leader integration coaching, or targeted coaching. And then executive coaching for us is a process. So each of these coaching lanes have a very specific process. When we talk about coaching, it's not, hey, what's on your mind? How can we help you feel better today? It's really about working through a process so that the person can create new habits and behavior change. So each of our coaching lanes have these processes, and our coaches will unpack that today. We also have just recently introduced, after coaching is over, a coaching digest. So for 6 months after coaching, we're providing curated resources for our coachee with online content to help them sustain some of those coaching gains. Real excited to have added that can extend the coaching sort of life cycle. And then last, before I turn it over to our panel, I wanted to just share a tiny little bit of data. So we did a coaching study last year, and we're embarking actually on our 2021 coaching study shortly. But what we found in asking our coachees about their coaching relationship is 93% of the coachees reported that they were definitely or somewhat better equipped to utilize new behaviors. So as this cognitive behavior learning model is really the foundation, we want to see our leaders reporting that they are using new behaviors. And 83% of our coachees in our last study identified that it helped them in times of uncertainty. And that's something that we find that's an important coaching objective. So in general, we believe that coaching does work. We're looking forward to doing our coaching study again, and you can watch for that in about hopefully 6-8 weeks. We'll have the data collected, and we'll be putting together a white paper for those that we've coached over this last year to kind of understand it and really how it unpacked in terms of particular perceived benefits. And again, you can use this as a way to maybe prompt some of your questions, is that 83% of our coachees in our last study reported that it helped them focus on the most important work that they need to accomplish. So, alignment, clarity, really important part of coaching. A second element was to strengthen their interpersonal skills. And third was to improve a long-term perspective. So not just in the moment firefighting, make better decisions, Improving confidence is an important part of coaching, and I think we'll talk a little bit about that today. And then on a personal level is to reduce the person's stress, which can hopefully help them show up to be a better coach. So I just wanted to share some data to get us started, and that'll prime our pump for our conversation today. And with that, I'm excited to introduce our esteemed coaching panel. I've had an opportunity to work with Lucy, Mehdi, and Julie for some of them going on about 15 years now. And I am excited to have a diverse slate of coaches join our panel today. And each of these folks will start by giving a brief introduction of their background in terms of their work that they did in corporate and how they got into coaching. And then we will get ready to jump into our questions. So with that, panel, can you join me? Thanks. Julie Reed, Lucy Patello, and Mehdi Ilkanipour. Thanks again for taking your time out today. And Lucy, can you get us started with, give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you got into coaching, and then we'll jump into our questions after our introductions.
Sure, thank you, Steve. It's been an honor working with Steve for the last, I would say, 10 years or so. So I'm really excited to be part of this panel as well. I work in the corporate environment for almost 25 years, mostly in commercial and marketing areas in global companies that sometimes when I mention these names, it feels like I'm coming from the prehistory or from, I mean, I don't know, Xerox, Motorola, and Kodak, which, I mean, most of them are not even longer there, or doing something totally different from what we were doing 30 or 40 years ago. No 40, but 30 or so. Yeah, I'm not that old. And then I worked for PepsiCo as part of Frito-Lay. And after that, 12 years ago, I decided to change gears. I was really, I would say, tired personally, professionally, but I didn't know what to do. And someone that I trusted told me about coaching, and I decided to get certified. I got certified in New Ventures West in San Francisco. I loved the experience, and I've been an executive coach since then. And when they asked me what I love the most of what I do every day, it's really being with people, being for them when they need me, and when they need me to just stay and listen and be quiet, and when they want something else, I mean, sometimes even a suggestion or a recommendation, to be there for them. That's what makes my day and my profession so complete and happy.
Thanks, Lucy. And again, thanks for joining us. Julie, would you give us a little bit of background on yourself?
Yes. Again, my name is Julie Reed, and I have worked with Steve now for probably over 10 years as well, Lucy. We've been doing this together. And my background is founded in human resources. I was part of senior teams where I was leading change and developing leaders and developing teams in professional service industries. So the industries I came out of were financial, legal, architectural engineering, technical staffing. So that was like the first part of my career. And what I realized all along that was I was always willing to support people in helping them to reach their potential. And so the second half of my career, I focused probably about 12 years ago, I decided also that I was going to do the parts of human resources that really brought me joy. And that was the development piece. So focusing on coaching and consulting, I do both. And really like the leadership development, the team development, the organizational development I have found that I'm just I get to learn new things and have a growth mindset myself. So it's been awesome. Yeah. And I love coaching for that reason. It's a very personal experience, and I always learn something. So that's awesome.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. And again, thanks for being here. Mehdi.
Yes, thanks, Steve, and good morning, everyone. My name is Mehdi Ilkanipour, and I work with Dion Leadership as a consultant and executive coach. I believe I've worked with Steve for about 5 or 6 years. I live in Northville, Michigan. Academically, I have a doctorate in engineering and then extensive training in general management, finance, and various aspects of executive leadership coaching. My career has encompassed many functional areas in product innovation, operations, marketing, and strategy development, and really culminating in general management and CEO positions during the last, I guess, dozen years of my corporate life. And I also founded my own company, a materials technology and manufacturing company, and had it for about 7 years before selling it. I focused on executive coaching for the last 6 years, continuing really my passion for development of people and practice of coaching that really started in the early 2000s. I've coached leaders in various industries, including manufacturing, technology, retail, healthcare. And again, my passion is to see people develop and excel. And having experienced the challenges of executive management myself, I personally appreciate the value of coaching. Finally, I also provide some volunteering consulting to small businesses as part of the National SCORE organization, just for small business. So that's my background.
Great. Well, as you can see, we have 3 people from 3 very different business walks of life. And if we took another 3 of our coaches, you'd find another 3 different experiences. And one of the things that we find that's helpful with coaching is that the coachee gets to select someone from a situation in their life that resonates to their coaching need at that particular time. And that's an important element. And our coaches understand that. And sometimes they'll say, I don't think I'm a fit for this coaching assignment. This coach might be better fit for that. But with that, there's a common methodology and process that we use. So would love to, so as you now have a little bit of background on these 3 folks, we'll dive into some questions and you'll get a better sense of the types of people they've coached and how and which we coach and what's going on with leaders. I'm going to start with a question or 2, but again, I'll monitor the chat here and feel free to throw in any questions that you might have. But Julie, let me start with you. So I know I introduced the topic of coaching very generally, but from your point of view as somebody who coaches, can you talk about the difference between coaching, training, and consulting? You know, what do you do in a coaching session and how is that different?
Yeah, so coaching is very different from training and consulting. When you think about training and consulting, you're thinking about learning expert, from an expert, typically in a training situation. And in consulting, it's about problem solving. In coaching, what a coach does, a coach isn't necessarily there to solve your problems, although the outcome of the process is usually that you are able to solve your own problems. But it has a lot to do with helping the coachee, whether it's the CEO or any level, helping that person to very clearly identify their goals, identifying and understanding their obstacles, challenges, things that are in their blind spots, and then helping them to figure out strategies, new ways of considering doing things, whether that's in their behavior, very specifically back to that cognitive behavioral model, or perhaps they come up with a different way of thinking about it, reframing something so that they're able to accomplish those goals. So it's it is very much that the coach facilitates that discovery process, and it's not the coach telling or the coach problem solving with the individual, but they're a thought partner that helps that person figure out through open-ended questions and curiosity and inquiry, helping that person come to a higher understanding and trying new things to achieve those goals.
Great, thanks for that intro, Julie. That makes a ton of sense. I think, anything else, panel, you want to add?
I just want to add that coaching is really a very customized development tool.
Yeah.
I think Julie already mentioned that, but I think that's worth emphasizing. It's a very customized tool, and it is anchored upon really the coach's own efforts to improve. This is also very important. Whereas, as Julie mentioned, training is of course very important, but it's generally not customized for an individual. And then consulting work is, mostly completed by consultants, and organizational learning or individual development are generally not part of the process.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to add, Steve, is that, with a one-on-one one-on-one relationship with a coachee, there's also the accountability piece for the process, right? It's like if you have a physical fitness coach, right? The person's there as you're practicing these new exercises. It's the same thing in coaching. The coach is there to support while the coachee is practicing new ways of doing things or thinking about things.
Great. Mehdi, can you share some coaching focus areas or themes that you saw in 2021, and were they different than past years because of what's happened in our, pandemic world?
Yeah, I think although the critical leadership attributes such as like communication, execution, strategic vision, etc., continue to be of major attention areas, I think there are indeed a few areas that have come more to the forefront in 2020 or 2021, really because of, I think, the changes in work processes due to the COVID circumstances. And I think the real major one is the importance of focus and being able to compartmentalize things. Much more difficult than before, I think, in these circumstances. Then I think work-life balance and burnout are now much more prevalent topics. And I think executives are now challenged with and have some difficulty with regards to collaboration and agile execution when it comes to the current environment. And really all of these, again, have become more critical as the workforce has been working remotely for the most part.
I would just add resilience. I mean, to really come back from falls or from mistakes. I mean, so that resilience and from different situations. And if we think that 3 or 4 generations are working together, but now, I mean, the difference between them are sometimes even more evident, I guess. So resilience and having the right conversations at the right time could be also the challenges, adding
Really
to what
point.
just Mehdi said.
A really good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I have seen very specifically coachees, express a lot of I think it contributes to the burnout, but the anxiety that is just revving in the background all the time because there's so much uncertainty, right? With even in the businesses where there are shortages of resources and businesses affected, right, because of it, or customers, what I've seen too in coaches is their customers are having problems. And so that's impacting their business, which adds more stress to what they're trying to do, right, and work under.
We have a question that's coming in on a hybrid work environment. So Lucy, if you could take this, hybrid work is all the discussion rage these days. Is there something you are coaching leaders on regarding this? And if so, what are you finding to be their challenges about leading in a hybrid environment?
Yeah. And I will just go back to what I just mentioned. I mean, having the right conversations at the right time. There is no, at least now the water cooler conversations or some casual conversations are not happening and are not taking place. So to really be intentional of having those conversations and to ask for feedback and give feedback. Be really intentional. Schedule the time with the person, your direct report, your colleague, your boss, to give feedback. It's so easy for us to get just into the work mode in like working meeting after meeting, but to really be intentional about that. The other one that I just read an article in the Harvard Business Review. It's about psychological safety in the hybrid workplace. You can look for that. It's great. It's pretty recent from April, from Amy Edmondson and Mark Mortensen. But that talks about how psychological safety is so important in these days where people could speak up without the fear or risk of consequences or judgments or different perceptions. So that's another one that I would say. And empathy, I guess, is also really important. It's been there always, but maybe now more than before. Empathy is really, really important. And I was also, I'm reading a book from Erica Dawan, I guess. It's called Digital Body Language. And it's I don't know if you've heard of it. Julie, I saw your face.
Yeah. No, I have heard of it. I haven't read it.
It's really good. And it gives us some etiquette rules to how to, interact in the virtual or hybrid world and in hybrid environments. And it's about how we sometimes judge without asking or without really, we are interpreting and some other, things that the people says or does, and it's about body language, it's about even culture, it's about, and it's so interesting. And the other one is to remain curious. That's the other one that I would say. Try not to assume, try not to say that I know the answer, that I know. Be curious, be really open for learning, be really open to other ideas, and innovation and creativity will flow. So I guess that has been the main challenge that I've been coaching on, Steve, in regards of hybrid environment.
Well, thanks, Lucy. Anybody else want to add anything before I move on?
Let me just add one thing. I think Lucy mentioned the critical soft attributes. I think on the hard side, I think the executives have a challenge in effective collaboration because I think commitment and communication and accountability have a correlation with physical proximity. And the absence of physical proximity in this environment, they become much more challenging and can negatively impact the effective collaboration. So that's certainly, I've seen something that a lot of the leaders are having to deal with and find solutions for.
Thanks. Another question on confidence. Julie, if you could take this one. So building confidence in oneself is written up as being one of the biggest and most important intangible benefits of coaching. It is not written up as a specific coaching objective or outcome necessarily, though. Why does coaching produce improved confidence, do you think?
Yeah, so it's one of the as a coach, it's when you see this happening with your coachee towards the end of the engagement, this is where, I mean, you're like, yes, right? Not only have they a leadership mindset, and some more tools in their toolkit, but they are feeling very confident as leaders. So in coaching, I think, Mehdi, you mentioned this, that one has to be ready as the coachee, right? To be open, to be willing to listen to feedback, to do the work, to try to figure out the goals and how to get there. And oftentimes, this work can be in some ways uncomfortable because you're trying new ways of doing things, right? That cognitive behavioral model where, typically we would have a reflex to do something one way, but instead to be more effective, we're going to take a different route. We're going to try something different. That is emotionally uncomfortable. And when coachees lean into that, and they try it. And oftentimes when we try something and we're not good at it, right? We got to hang in there. And that's the coaching process helps with that. You may not get it right the first few times, but we're going to work towards this. We may try something else. And so by doing the work that doesn't come, naturally, some of it isn't natural. And doing things that are a little uncomfortable, through that process and through it working towards the goals and then, having achieved the goals, one feels very confident in the end, which is a gift. It's just awesome because when you're confident, then you're open for what's the next challenge, right? You have more of a growth mindset in that way.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the insights, Julie. Let me keep moving on because a lot of questions are coming in. The next question here is, I am in a coaching role in my company. The individuals I'm expected to coach often do not have the knowledge to answer the questions. They are specific to situations and there is a customer on the other end. So time is of the essence. How do you encourage them to find answers versus giving it to them? Their managers believe they have the knowledge and encourage them to avoid the process until an issue arises. So I know that's a little bit targeted, but I think that's generally a coaching kind of idea regarding, telling versus finding answers themselves. Somebody want to comment on that? How you coach to that?
Well, I'll speak to it. The coach, is going to ask a lot of questions. And I remember once sitting down with a coachee and literally for an hour, which was very beneficial. I explored with him. I posed questions with him, and I kept getting a lot of one-word answers or some excuses. And through my curiosity and asking questions, I finally got that aha moment that was huge, that he needed to have in order to own it. And so it's important. If I would have just said, you should do this, chances are he might have gotten very defensive, which wouldn't have been helpful, wouldn't have got him where he needed to be. He needs to go through the thought process in order to have that aha moment for himself, which then he can own. Yeah. So in this case, It sounds like there's a time element that they're concerned about, right? That, why don't they just get to it? If we're just told what to do and the problem is, the leader tells the person how to solve the problem, chances are they won't learn to do that for themselves. And they could potentially become dependent on that person to be the problem solver. So much better to ask questions and teach somebody, how to fish, so to speak, so that they can fish for themselves and own it.
Now, let me take a crack at this one too. I think, as Julie mentioned, I think a coach poses critical, open questions, things that cannot be answered with a yes, no, or are difficult to answer in very short blurbs. So I think posing open questions is one. The other thing I wanted to stress is that a coach also has a responsibility to a good extent to dial in with the executive sponsor or the managers, in this case, of the coachee, because there are certain circumstances and instances that the manager herself or himself needs to be a little bit more aware of the situation and perhaps be the recipient of such open-ended questions. So I think that also goes one level higher to the managers as well.
Great, and I'm getting some responses back here that some of our coaches are actually chiming into our little chat feature saying, talk about the manager's role, and the dependence element of this is it can be personally gratifying to feel dependent on that person and give them an answer. And so us as coaches have to check ourselves to say, is it really a time issue? Or is it that we want to have them to be needed and want us and give an answer and feel good about that? And asking the why and the how do you know that to be true, and ask it again, and having the uncomfortable pause. To your point, Julie, at that point where there's a moment where somebody goes, wow, I finally put two and two together in my brain and I'm thinking about this totally wrong. That's where you get long-term behavior change for sure.
Yeah.
How do you personalize the question to what the executive seeks to accomplish or improve is a question that we've had come in. So we're talking about coaching questions. How do you think about personalizing the way in which you ask that question to the coachee specific to their personal situation?
I can take that, Steve. Part of the process in coaching is really to understand the coachee's environment, their responsibilities, their history, their reporting relationships. We also do stakeholder interviews many times so that we have feedback or a 360. And so through that, we get a lot of information to really understand the coachee and their context. And through that, we're able to listen. You have to listen very astutely and actively. And from that, you're able to find the open-ended question that will help stimulate the thinking to get to that aha moment.
It's like peeling an onion, right? I mean, when you start like taking up layers and layers until you get to where the aha moment is but it takes time sometimes. It's really this active listening that you just mentioned, Julie, and the personalized questions based on what you're hearing from the coachee. It's not a list of questions that are part of these are the questions that I need to ask, but the questions are more based on what the coachee is telling you and what you can see his suffering is coming from, and that's really the art, I guess, of questioning in a personalized way.
And sometimes it's not just a question, but it's repeating back to somebody what they just said so they can linger on their own statement and go,
Yes. Yep.
Wow, is that really how I framed that and what I said? And just being able to replay that to somebody is as powerful as any question.
Yes. Yep.
And I think part of the personalization is also from the perception of other people. In other words, the person may have some ideas about how the organization perceives them, and then in reality, when you do, for example, a 360 or some sort of assessment analogous to that, I think that could be different. And I think that being part of the foundational steps, it kind of, as Lucy mentioned, kind of peels the onion, right? So peeling the onion is not only by the coach and perhaps by the coachee, but also by other people that are indirectly there, not directly there. Yeah.
Since you brought that up, we do have a question about self-assessments and 360 assessments and how we use them in the process. Lucy, could you kind of comment on that?
Sure. I mean, 360s have been out there for, I guess, decades, but they're still popular. We still use them a lot, as Mehdi mentioned, because they are a great tool to recognize and honor the individuality of leaders. I mean, what we provide them with a unique and clear path of their development. So it's like an X-ray, right? I mean, you show them what other people is perceiving from their behaviors, from their different competencies. So it's great for action planning. It's great to even start new conversations with the stakeholders, with the people that have been part of the 360. I mean, just ask them. I mean, I got this report and I'm curious about. So there are so many things that you can come out from a 360, not just the report itself and the feedback from a coach, but the conversations that the leader could have with the different stakeholders to get this feedback, and with that, define the action plan, the what, the how, and that's why we really believe 360s help a lot.
Here's another question. I think I'll just take this one really quick. So I'm a learning development specialist, and we're looking to have a manager as coach training session for our leadership team to help develop some coaching skills. Do you have any advice or tips that we can include in the training? I'll start with that, but you guys might have some comments as well. And why I wanted to start is that we have a leader as coach training curriculum, and we've taught everything from half day, kind of very light coaching skills for managers, up through 6 full days of content to have an internal person be ready to be certified as a leadership coach, with the experiences of having in between those workshops, being able to receive a 360, do practice coaching. And so I think it's really a value that you're thinking about this. And typically we would do, a day to 2 days where we call it kind of the lowercase c of coaching. So it's having a coaching style. I think being able to say to a manager, you are now a coach, is a big burden to ask of them, versus saying, we want to ask you to use coaching tools in the way in which you manage your people. Because at the end of the day, you're still their manager. There's an element to that. So typically what we're teaching in that content are about what we're really just unpacked here, things around your own mindset and unconscious bias around, how do you know that to be true? And that person needs to be authentic in their skin, not telling them to do something. So it's about how to ask curious questions, how to listen, how to paraphrase, how to help somebody be curious and not just say you're listening, but then give them an answer anyway because you're their boss, but really to help them go down a path and let something sit and linger and allow them to go experience something where maybe there's, it's not a high risk environment, and let them see how it works and come back and be curious and go, how'd that go? How'd it feel? How'd it work? And truly be of a coaching mindset, not I have to make sure everything's right 100% of the time. And, in a day program, you can get a lot done. I'd be happy to share with your sort of curriculum behind that if you're developing your own class. So that's a high level. Any other thoughts that you guys have on what somebody should include if they're going to teach coaching skills to managers?
I would just say, Steve, that the mindset you touched on it, the mindset is the most critical part, right? Because coaching is very developmental and a huge investment in developing, helping others to develop.
And I will also add to what Julie just said. I was thinking about the readiness of the company based on the culture.
Yeah.
Sometimes the fit for coaching within some culture, or it's kind of the right thing to do, but sometimes there's still maybe some pre-work or things to do even before you get to coaching.
Good point.
Yeah.
If they're command and control and already kind of a gotcha culture, trying to teach it now might be not the right next step. Another question, and Mehdi, if you could take this, it can be lonely as a senior executive in an organization. Do you think this is partially why most C-level executives have a leadership coach?
Well, I think there's certainly some of that, but I don't believe it is to the extent that is commonly assumed. I mean, after all, most C-level executives have a capable circle of outside colleagues that they can communicate with, bounce ideas off if they want to. So what I've observed is that C-level executives are great at many things, but they often need some help in what I call balancing paradoxical initiatives and leadership traits. So they're constantly bombarded by critical paradoxes that need to be proactively managed. I mean, you talk about like strategic versus tactical, revolutionary versus evolutionary initiatives, risk averse versus innovative, consistency versus change. The list goes on, and I think that's where coaching comes in. I believe it's that proper balance that's the most difficult for C-level executives and can have enormous ramifications for the company.
Great insight, thanks.
And I might add that maybe sometimes they need someone that dares to hold them accountable for their actions, right? Because sometimes they're at the top of the organization, and to have someone that really dares them, or say, I want to hold you accountable for these. What about your action plans? What about your accomplishments? Sometimes it's like having a Jiminy Cricket, right? Here from Pinocchio, kind of being there for them as well.
And I would just add also, CEOs are always spending a lot of their time trying to get good information to make good decisions. And so, in working with an executive coach, oftentimes, and they can be blind to that, right? How to do that. And so working with an executive coach often can help them to think about ways to more effectively get good information that's authentic information to make good decisions on, because it can be isolating in that way, right? They may not be getting the information that they need. So I have seen that as well.
Yeah, I want to capitalize on a word that Julie used, and that's blinded. I think going back to what I was talking about, the paradoxes, I think the CEOs or C-level executives are a lot of times blinded by their own imbalances in there, and there needs to be someone in there, like an executive coach, that brings that to the forefront before action plans and processes to improve it can happen. Yeah. So great word, Julie.
Well said, everyone. I find, as well as I work with the C-level executives, is that they get that others are tiptoeing around them, And strong executive leaders say, I don't know how to change that. I asked for feedback, but I understand why people are not going to want to say to me, when you do this, it shuts everybody down. Stop doing that, because they're just concerned. So they need somebody else to help navigate what's really going on in the organization. It's as much of an organizational sensing activity sometimes when it's for the C-suite as it is individual coaching too. Okay, next question. In your experience, do you think that people can develop these skills or enhance performance without coaching? Sometimes scaling the personalized coaching aspects is challenging in a big organization. And then second part of this, let me just throw that in now, is secondly, sometimes we hear that time is a barrier. What's your advice to overcome that? So, one of the things, I guess I'll start as you guys are thinking about that. That's a great question. We like to think about leadership development as an organizational culture change effort. And, we don't just have coaching as our only, coaching isn't just a hammer, so we're looking for a nail. We will sometimes say, you talk about coaching, maybe that's not the right tool. Maybe you do need a consulting project here. Maybe this is a leadership development program. Maybe it's skill development that's needed, not this sort of personal introspection point of view. Other times we will say, consider coaching. This person is a big lever to move a lot of things in the organization. Don't just send 20 people through a one-day class. Put all your efforts towards this one person that can do a lot of things in an organization. So it's a great question to think about. If you have a limited budget and scope and time, how does coaching fit into the wide array of things you can have somebody do? So I guess I'll stop with that kind of background. I have a couple of thoughts on it, but I'd rather have you guys as coaches give your thought to this.
Well, let me start. I would like to use the analogy of sports and the coach for the head coach for a sports team. Is it possible for a good player to achieve excellence without a coach? I guess that is probably possible, right? But the speed with which that particular player is going to achieve that excellence level, I think is a key thing. And I think somebody like an executive coach brings from outside visions to the process of development that is either not going to be there by that individual coachee, or if it's there, it's going to take an enormous amount of time. And so I think either way, the use of an executive coach is really a plus.
Another thing I would offer too is to not be programmatic about coaching necessarily. There are times in life when somebody's not ready to be coached, and then you are not using your money well in that situation. So being able to say, if we're going to put coaching based on our size budget on leadership development to 10 people in a year, it's choosing wisely. And it might not always be the person at the highest level in the organization, or it might not always be the person that just got into a new role. It's really thinking wisely about who could most benefit from that, and to be able to say, is this about somebody understanding skill? If this person went away to industry conference and learn best practices, is that going to change what we need in the organization? And in some instances, for a first level manager, they need basic skills. I need the 4 steps for having a feedback conversation. And if it's about skill acquisition, then use leadership development tools. But if it really is more about somebody needs a mindset shift, and they need to understand this idea that I've been successful because I did work, and now I'm need to stop doing work, and I need to coach others that do work. That's a big shift in the way in which you do work. And just taking a delegation class, for example, doesn't move that needle. If I use that as a, kind of very specific kind of tool or way to think about when you use coaching versus not. The other experience we've had from a kind of a modality perspective on coaching is to use group coaching programs. So not group training, but put pods of anywhere between 4 and 10 people together to do group coaching. So one way to scale coaching without having individual coaching is to have a pod where you get some 360 data or self-assessment, you write a development plan, and then through that pod, the coach, our team here, would unpack coaching and help the team get 30 minutes, in a 2-hour session each to unpack what they're working on. It gives that accountability piece. It allows somebody to help somebody else be in somebody else's shoes. So you're not only helping to teach coaching skills, but you're helping somebody or help reinforce somebody to be coached, but teaching coaching skills to other people. So if you have some advanced leaders, you may want to consider a group coaching cohort, very specific. We have a kind of a model, and I think it's on our website if you wanted to see more about that, but that might be one way to think about how to scale. I get the concern with that for sure. Next question, what are some of the ways you can earn the right to coach? Thought-provoking question.
Well, you have to be a person that can be trusted and found credible, right?
And I would add, the ethics part of it, and when we are part of the ICF, for example, the International Coaching Federation, I guess that's important. That's because it models our behaviors, and I guess the not just a methodology, but the ethics to the ICF. It's really helpful.
Well, we are at the top of the hour, so I apologize if we didn't get to every question. We're happy to continue dialogue. Feel free to give us a call at some point. I wanted to put up on the screen the PowerPoint one last time and share. Sorry, here, let me try to. Some current slide. So a couple of quick announcements here. One is that we are producing a white paper that just went on our website about virtual leadership development programs. So for those of you who are thinking about leadership versus coaching, we have a study comparing in-person versus virtual delivery, and wanted to just point to you that that's some good resources out there as well. We're publishing an article in training industry with a case study from NGK. So our last month we had the VP of HR from a client talk about their leadership program, and that's now getting published as a full case study. So watch for that. For those of you that do already coach with us, we're going to be asking the coaches that have finished coaching over the last year to collect, to give us some information as we do our 2021 coaching study. And in about, hopefully 6 to 8 weeks, we'll be producing a white paper with insights from that coaching study to reinforce what we've talked about today. And we have a podcast coming out next week about conversation about the Great Resignation, which has been the term of people leaving organizations. And we've been asked to give some comments or thoughts on that. So we have a lot of things going on in the space of thought leadership. Just wanted to share that with you. And then our next webinars, we have 2 coming up. And the next one is on October 7th, where we'll be hosting Professor Dr. Ellen Kosick talking about elements of well-being that begins with work-life alignment and the research that she's done for the last 20 years in this work-life conflict space. She's been written up in Harvard Business Review, just had an article in, I think it was either Wall Street Journal or New York Times. Great deep expert in this space, and we've been partnering with her on some work. Excited to have her on the show here. And then the month after, similarly, sticking with the professor theme, we have somebody coming to talk about the power of answers. He's written a book, done some TED Talks on the idea of using answers in addition to questions to frame the way in which you lead. So it's answer intelligence and this model of 6 types of answers to think about your leadership development profile. So excited to share those kind of thought leadership items with you, and wanted to thank Julie and Lucy and Mehdi again for your time and expertise today. I'm grateful to have you on our team, and hopefully everybody has found this exciting and way to think about other development tools that you can use within your organization. I appreciate your time, and feel free to give us a call, email, chat if you want to continue a conversation, and we can help and be successful in helping you be successful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Well, bye.
Goodbye.